Thank you, Al. We're so lucky today to see for the first time much of the work done by Stephanie Garcia and Margarita Mirabal at the main library digital archives. They've been working on this project. It's not done, but we're going to look at what we've done so far to reveal some of the old original portraits that Fred hand took in his old Miami studio. He had 2 locations, and we'll hear all about that stuff. So I hope you appreciate this as much as I do. This is absolutely phenomenal. I'm so glad we have Martha here with us. And ladies, if you're ready, are we ready? Well, we're going to pontificate a little more. So,
anything upcoming?
Yes.
If it works.
Yes. Oh, and by the way, sorry that we didn't meet in November and December, but it just didn't work out. So here we are today. We are meeting every second Saturday here at 2 o'clock. And to say the least, this is such a wonderful location. And we can do this live and also with all of our friends on Zoom. Hey, Frank, how you doing? How's everybody? I see Jeff is with us, Nancy, Marion. It's just such a wonderful location to meet. And Marlene is holding up a sign, which is what? Dues. Dues. Oh, at least we forget the old $20 a year deal, all right? Anybody here hasn't paid yet? You're embarrassed to raise your hand, I know. So just give her $20 on the way out or on the way in, either way. And you'll be good for a year. You get a secret blood initiation and you learn the secret handshake. And no, wait, we don't do that anymore, do we? Okay, so. But anyway, your support is very much appreciated to keep putting on good programs like this. Are we getting closer?
Okay, I think we're there.
Okay. So ladies, I'm going to hand you the microphone, and friends and members, let's enjoy your wonderful program today. Thank you for coming.
Okay, can everyone hear me? Yes? Okay. Excellent. So as Bob was saying, my name is Stephanie Garcia. I'm the head of special collections and archives for Miami-Dade Public Library System, and we're based at my main library in downtown. I imagine that you've all, as Rob was saying, this has been a long time in the works. I just want to kind of start by saying that this is not the complete vision of it, but it is a start. Okay, so to begin with, the collection that we have, like just to give you an overview of what we've seen within the materials. The collection holds photographs, postcards, correspondence, and news clippings. Wow, the echo is a little hard. Yeah, I'm so sorry. And it follows the life of Miami pioneer John Frederick Fred Hand. His wife Olive, his son Russell, and their daughter Gretchen. They arrived in Miami in 1898. Fred Hand would have been one of the first, but in fact the first to open a photo studio. And the collection offers a historical account of the family intertwined with the city's progress and offers a glimpse into the people and friends that intersected in their lives. So just to give you an idea in terms of the materials that we have at present and that we've reviewed, like I said, there's photographs, small booklets such as this Miami Pioneers booklet that was done for their anniversary and in 1920. News clippings, correspondence. Fred Hand and his wife and children were members of the Order of the Eastern Star, Masonic organization. And so there's a Shriner's cap, which might be Fred's, I'm guessing. I'm not 100% sure, but we found this Shriner's cap. In terms of the photographs, and the photographic formats, we have nitrate negatives, glass negatives, tin types, which are prints that are done on tin, prints on porcelain, and traditional photographs that we call silver gelatin prints. So just to give you sort of a setup for what it took to kind of start to process this collection, this is our behind the scenes and sort of just giving you a sense of how these items were received. We had about the equivalent of 2 large bags of photographs. There were some notes on them. We see that there's some names, and while those are grouped, there's also a stack of images that aren't. So now it becomes like this game of figuring out who's who and piecing things together. Within archives, what we do is when we survey a collection. Can you hear me now?
That's better.
Excellent, I'm so sorry. So what we do with archives is that we want to survey a collection at the onstart. That means that we're checking their condition, we're seeing if there's mold, we're seeing if something smells funny, shouldn't smell funny, and also looking to see if there are any items that perhaps in a case where there's damage might need to be deassessed, which means we would remove it to protect the rest of the collections. We do a session, which means that we're rehousing those items. Photographs don't stand well if you're constantly touching them, and so sleeving them, putting them in acid-free paper and protecting them. All of this stuff takes time. We're also sorting and grouping them. And so the same as what this person did here, where they were grouping it, deciding, oh, these are all the photos of Gretchen, these are all the photos of Dewey, these are all the photos of Fred and Olive. We're doing something similar when we're sorting and grouping them. We're also doing research alongside that, trying to learn more about the people and really trying to also figure out the names of those that we don't recognize. Ultimately, at the end of this whole process, we'll have, is it okay? Ultimately, the end of this process, we'll have something called a finding aid, which is a summary of everything that we've been able to amass to give you a real scope of everything that it contains. And by doing that, we'll also have a lot of information, which on our end, we call metadata. And so for those of you that might wonder if everything in the world is digitized, it's not. And so, what we do when we're trying to identify items that are for digitization, we're considering 4 things. We're considering preservation of cultural heritage. We're thinking about whether these collections are accessible, like providing better accessibility and what global reach they might have. We're thinking about the elements of research and education that they can provide. And also in cases where items are fragile or not sustainable on their own, not stable, we're also trying to mitigate that by digitizing them. Just as an aside, this is a tray of photographs that have been rehoused and assessed. You'll see sort of a number on the top left. That's associated with a line of information on a very boring looking spreadsheet. But that very boring spreadsheet is very helpful to Margarita's team when they're given this information. And so just on the front, you'll see Gretchen and Linton Smith, and alongside many other images. So these have all been deemed for digitization. We won't be seeing those in the website, but this is what you would see, but very soon. So this is an example of some of the earliest photographs that we have processed and that we're looking through right now. Likely this is in Florida. This is the Hand family, and what you'll see on the left in the little boy on the bicycle is likely Russell Hand, the firstborn son of Fred and Olive Hand. The couple standing on either side of the baby is Olive Hand, Fred Hand, and their daughter Gretchen. Imagine seeing all these photographs and trying to decipher a young Olive when I start going through all these photographs, I'm seeing Olive in her 80s, in her 60s. And Fred Hand, this is actually until recently that we're gonna be receiving a few other items perhaps, or at least digitizing them. This is the youngest image that I have of Fred Hand. I don't have very many.
What year?
Oh, thank you. Likely this is, well, Gretchen's a baby and she's born in 1898. So we're looking around 1899, likely. This is another photograph. You'll see on the bottom left corner, it's a very small square photograph. And so while we hadn't digitized this yet, I used sort of an enlarger, a loop, what we call, and used my phone so I could take a closer photograph of it and inspect to see if I saw any familiar faces. And this has been like over the course of recognizing these people like they're my family. This small boy is definitely Russell Hand. Not 100% sure, but I'm guessing that the woman who, in the larger shot, she's actually looking at the little boy is also Olive Hand. This photograph, if of this time, is definitely maybe 1890, because Russell was born in, I believe, 87. So here's some more photographs from the earlier period. We have Gretchen, Russell, and Olive in two different studio portraits. The idea, we'll keep going because there's something just really lovely about how these images look. You know, the Hand family, because they arrive in Miami, at the very beginning of Miami being a city, they are friends with everyone who helped make Miami a city. And so while the little girl in the oval portrait of these three little girls, in the center is Gretchen Hand. To her left is Bessie Burdine of the Burdine family. To her right is Marguerite Brown, who I haven't been able to identify yet. We also have Gretchen looking at this little girl. I don't know who this little girl is yet. So there's sort of like it's all sort of a mystery a little bit. So now getting into the Fred Hand studio. We don't have, at the moment, we don't have very many photographs of the Hand studio. But this is a great example of it being of a class photograph being taken in front of what I understand is the second studio that Hand has. I did a good bit of research through our newspaper index or newspaper database that we have. With your library card, you can go onto the Miami Herald and see actual images of our newspapers all the way back to the beginning of the newspaper and to present day, which is really fabulous. It also allows you to do word searches. So this was just a search for Fred Hand, you know, simple. Yes?
I can't read the address. Where was the studio?
So at this time in the 1919, Fred Hand studio was at 320 and a half 12th Street over a drugstore, with instructions that say, climb the stairs and save the difference in price of photographs. So what I wanted to do, since I didn't have many photos, I kind of just wanted to give a sense of some of the information that was being shared about Fred Hand during this time. In 1915, there's a notice about Fred Hand talking about his studio having been on 1109 Avenue C. We also have a note that says, he maintains one of the best studios in the city and has kept abreast of the times. He makes a specialty of development work with amounts considerable in the winter months when the tourists are in Miami and with their cameras. The newspapers that I looked into also were very keen on talking about the good old days. So, so this particular newspaper article from 1939 is in fact talking about 1901. So I imagine that it wasn't that they were just a special group of people that found, you know, that helped found the Miami Pioneers. They were also constantly being considered when thinking about times before, how things have changed, and really reminiscing. This was an interesting article because it notes a few things. This picture of two twin girls, which at the time now are women, notes that the pictures were taken in a photographic studio by Hand and Alexander. which means that at a time, Fred Hand actually shared a studio, maybe at the very beginning when he moved to Miami, and says that they recall that the Hand and Alexander studio was situated close to the Miami post office when it was located in South Miami Avenue across from the street from Burdett's. We also have an account of the pioneers celebrating Olive Hand in 1952, which has a great title, Hunter Pioneer Who Once Lived in Tent, which also says that she, when they first arrived, they were living in a tent that was pitched down Northeast First Avenue, a spot where at that point a stationery store is now open. There's also accounts from 1912 where they lived in where the studio is in Avenue C, and then by 23, Fred has moved his location to 17th Terrace and 3rd Avenue, having paid a whopping $22,500 for a home. There's also a note in the article that says it's a 12-room modern residence with 4 baths, sunroom, and screened porches. I wouldn't mind that with real estate prices being what they are. He also makes a note to say that at the very beginning, some of his first visitors were 3 or 4 regiments of Spanish-American war soldiers who were camped there in the summer and fall of 1898. There's something interesting about being a photographer at this time. We don't have, we have maybe a handful of people that documented this. We have Ralph Monroe, we have Fishburne, we have Richard Hoyt, we have Romer starting in 1920. But this is an interesting article that was found that refers to many pictures and negatives of the early days in Fred Hand's studio having been destroyed, unfortunately, due to a fire. And so that sort of answered a question that was looming in my mind of just thinking, why don't we have more photos from before? And so, of course, the 1926 hurricane ends up decimating a lot of memories and a lot of information, and so that sort of stands as a reasonable excuse. Not onto the family. So this is Fred Hand and his wife, Olive Hand. This was actually a photograph that was taken for a golden anniversary. You can see that it is in color because it was hand painted. At the time of Fred Hand's business, it was Fred who was taking the pictures. It was his wife who was developing the photos because she couldn't find many people that were well acquainted with the trade. And their daughter Gretchen would paint the pictures or do this sort of technical, like this hand painting. This would have been the absolute top of technology at the time, and would have been, it is truly a skill to even do that.
And what year was that?
This is, so Fred dies in 44, and their anniversary happens, so I'd say this is in 39, 38. I'm sorry, I don't have the exact date, but it's around that time. John Frederick Hand, originally known as Johann Frederick Hand, he was born in Bonn, Germany. He arrived in the United States when he was young, and he arrived with his uncle and was naturalized in 1880, having lived briefly in Chicago as a traveling salesman. And he married Olive Williams, 14 years his junior, in 1891, when he had traveled down to Florida after having a spell of illness that was, at the time, presumed might have been tuberculosis, but was not. He was, in addition to being a charter member for the Miami Pioneers, he was also a member of the Order of the Eastern Star and the Trinity Episcopal Cathedral. as mentioned, there is not so much about Fred. And so looking into these newspapers was tremendously helpful in sort of contextualizing why did they come, what were they doing. They traveled significantly, throughout Florida quite a bit. They spent time in Tampa, they spent time in Titusville, they spent time in West Palm Beach, which at the time was still considered Dade County, before they came to Miami. For such an influential man, I'm surprised that his obituaries were so short, kind of sweet to the point. But when looking through the newspapers, he is everywhere. I think he just might have had the photographer's personality, which would have preferred to be behind the camera rather than in front. Yes, sir, you had a question.
Yeah, is that date correct? In the Herald?
June 15th, 1944.
Didn't he die on the 16th?
Well, if he did, then let me see.
Previous slide, I want to see.
It is the 16th. You're absolutely right. My mistake. Thank you for catching that.
No,
No, I appreciate it. I know details matter, so thank you very much. Olive McIntyre Williams Hand, born in Skilsnell. I hope that I said that right. I have no idea. Kentucky. She was married to Fred at the age of 18, and truly she was celebrated throughout her life. There are so many articles, there's so many organizations that she was a member of that spoke to her in high regard. She was also actively participating within the community, doing talks, doing presentations. She was referred to as Mama Hand later in life, and she died at 94 years old. So here, these are the two of the oldest photographs that we have. The left is a tintype of Lily, her sister, and Olive being to the lower right and Lily on the top right in Ocala, Florida. To the right, we have the sisters together in Florida, circa 1900. So as I was saying, with the Miami Women's Club, which was an organization that Olive was part of, originally known as the Miami Married Ladies Society. I knew that was gonna get a laugh, actually. I was betting on it. That name didn't last very long. I can't imagine why. The Miami Women's Club and so many women's clubs throughout the nation, if you didn't know, are part of the reason why we have libraries today. If you didn't, now you do. It's something that I'm not fully clear how it was all succinctly planned, but in this article that was published in 1950, they're sort of reflecting on what had happened up to that point. So in this article, Ms. Hand basically says how everyone was getting together to bring their babies and their fancy work, which I imagine was knitting or some other variety of crochet, embroidery of the time, and that Mrs. James M. Jackson, because at the time you don't have your name necessarily, you are your husband's wife, says that she would like to improve, she thought that they should improve their minds, and that she didn't care for fancy work, Ms. Hand says, and so they brought books, and one member would read while the rest of them would sew on weekly meetings. And so the first book that they read is Jane Eyre, and Mrs. William Burdine was the reader. Is that me? I didn't even move. Further information about the Women's Club, because it speaks so well of the library. Within early projects, they were able to complete so many contributions towards the city's development. This includes the Flagler Memorial Library, which used to be located where Bayfront Park is, and preceded the main library that we have today. They had a traveler's aid, they had a city curb market, They had Miami's first African-American library. They had a parent-child guidance bureau and even a citizenship school for foreign-born folks. In 1900, 2 years after they had first created their constitution and bylaws, they decided to allow their library to circulate among non-members. By 1903, they had 1,000 volumes of books, and by the time of this article, they had over 30,000 volumes in their shelves. So much so that they had folks like Henry Flagler providing them land so that they could build a library by 1912. And there's a note here that says that by 1905, the women had tried to maintain a public reading room, but the library continued to grow and would outgrow their various temporary quarters. Fun fact I didn't know about the library's history, Julia Tuttle at one point loaned out her home, a section of her home, to the Women's Club so that a temporary library and clubhouse could exist in her home. I didn't know that, and that's like part of our history too. This is a very large spread article in front of our former main library. And here is Olive Hand hanging out with another gentle lady. I think that the amount of work and dedication that she had for this city was extremely impressive. So much of what the photographs are the pioneers celebrating her birthday, making big events, even like the one from before. And so here is her obituary, and just reminding that she arrived in Florida in 1880 in a covered wagon. Russell Hand, we don't know a tremendous amount of information, and it's of what we know, it's interesting. He's born in Titusville. He dies of a heart attack at 53 years old. He was a school board member, but unfortunately was removed by the governor for personal improprieties. Nothing else was provided about that. I'm more curious than I can admit on that. We have other photographs of him, but these are what we have available at this time. The one piece of correspondence that related to this, and it was interesting because a relative of Fred Hand is here today, and had expressed in an oral history and in a report that a letter had been written by Gretchen, his sister, sending it to the governor saying, please, reinstate my brother. And this was the response that she received. I didn't even realize because it was so short and to the point. And it's almost polite and impolite simultaneously. He says, I think you are exactly right to stick by your brother, and I hope you will continue to do so. I find that my own sister has a way of doing just that, even when I'm wrong. So.
What a politician.
What a politician. It's true, absolutely. I'm not sure of the state that Russell Hand had in his life at the time, specifically speaking to whether he was at home, whether he was separated from his wife. The only reason I say that, not to try to find drama where there isn't any, it does note in his obituary that he lived at the Savoy Hotel, and that in recent months prior to his unfortunate heart attack, he had been working as a taxi driver. Previous to being on the school board, he was an insurance agent. And even previous to that, as a young man, was a timekeeper for the Florida East Coast Railway. The Hand family, when they were in West Palm Beach and traveled down to Miami in 1898, were essentially following Flagler and the railroad. And so when Flagler gets to Miami, that's when they are. So it would make perfect sense that he would have been working in one of those industries. Gretchen Hand. So this adorable baby is Gretchen Hand. there is nothing on it that says Gretchen Hand. There is only a small note, which I'm sorry you won't be able to see very well, but when we get it digitized, you will. It's a small note that just says 8 months. It says 1897. And at the time, I wasn't putting together everybody's birthdays, you're just starting to piece it together. And then I realized, oh, that's Gretchen. It was also interesting to try and piece through this while Gretchen's first name was born Olive, Marguerite Hand. And so that made it an interesting process in trying to sort that through just at the very beginning. And so this is a document that was produced by Fred and Olive, her mother, to sort of instate that Gretchen and Olive Marguerite are one and the same. Because when she's trying to apply for a passport, much later on in life, she can't because she doesn't have a birth certificate. And if anybody's ever tried to contact vital statistics, it really does take forever to go back and forth in that paperwork. Gretchen was born in West Palm Beach, which was at the time Dade County. Gretchen married 3 times. She married Paul Smith, then Dude Hilsebeck, sorry for that extra quotation, and Ben Kincaid. She worked many years towards later on at the Miami bar pilots, and she graduated from Miami High School. Hey, awesome.
What are Miami?
I don't know enough about that right now. I will say that there is, I'm sure, I know it does sound like drinking pilots. I don't think it's drinking pilots because we do see a picture of her at an office. That'd be an interesting place. She was also a member of the Order of the Eastern Star, Miami Pioneers, Trinity Episcopal Cathedral, and a bird watcher. So she was part of the Audubon Society. So I want to show you, you see how she is as a little girl. You see her as a little older, and here is Gretchen as a young woman. Initially, of course, you put them next to each other, you say, of course, it's the same person. But what a challenge to go through these hundreds of photos trying to identify who's who. Gretchen was also very much part of the social life in Miami. And here is her, here's a picture of her and her son, Linton Smith. And this is where I think she's at the bar pilots, but now I just wonder. Of all of them, it seems that Gretchen has the longest, most thoughtful obituary. It really speaks to who she was as a person. It speaks to her family. It really talks about who she was, and I find that, especially with Olive and with Gretchen, that the women of this family were well revered. Yes.
Okay, I think I solved your mystery. Looks like paragraph 1, 2, 3, 4.
An avid bird watcher? 1, 2,
Miami-Bay
3.
pilots. Pilots.
Bay pilots.
Those are the harbor pilots. So
Thank you.
Cruise ships out.
Although they did have a bar.
I'm sure they had a bar. Thank you. That was
call themselves the bar.
that was a recent addition, so that makes so much sense. Thank you very much. Oh no, I mean, yes, you're right.
It's a typo.
Yeah. We're thinking bar pilots because that's what I always knew. And the pilots commanded the boats, drove the piloted the boats through the government cut up to
Okay.
the little boat would go out to the big boat and
So they don't go on a sandbar.
And I think it was bar.
Bar comes from
We're not
sandbar.
talking about bar.
Oh,
We're talking about sandbar. That makes way more sense too.
Check it out.
Well, excellent. Yes. I wouldn't have outed you though. So this is Gretchen's granddaughter, Martha, who we're very, very happy to have with us today. Thank you so much for everything. And here is her dad, Linton Smith, this very cute baby. I'm gonna try and not make all this feedback noise, I'm sorry. Linton is born in Indianapolis, Indiana, where Gretchen and her then husband, Paul Smith, lived. Following her divorce, she moves back to Miami with Linton, but Linton travels between Indiana and Miami. Linton also graduated from Miami High School and served in the Second World War. When he returned, he was a tradesman in tools and dyes. And as the, is there anything else?
Oh, I was just going to say it's tool and die maker, D-I-E.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, not dyes.
Oh,
die.
like die cuts.
Yeah.
I understand.
Yeah.
If you go back 1 second to the goat picture.
I'll show you, yeah.
I think, that, you know, there was a photographer who ran around with this goat in a cart. And there may be other people in the room here who have a relative that was pictured in the goat cart as a little kid. It was not uncommon. And so there you have Linton.
It's such a successful racket. I remember as a kid, there was a guy with a pony walking around my neighborhood.
That says 23, this says 32.
There's quite a few. There was yeah, here, can I see?
Sure. It looks like the same wagon. Only
Yeah.
thing is the dates.
Yeah, that guy lived a long life with that goat. Now, maybe
He's traveling different states.
Over the years.
Over the years?
There was a
Oh,
goat
that's
photographer
awesome.
in every county in the country.
So apologies for that typo. I'm sorry. Linton was the first grandson of Fred and Olive. So as you can guess, there are a lot of pictures of Linton. So where I had to be very, try to find as many photographs as I could for this presentation, in this case, I really had to edit down so that it wasn't just a presentation on photographs of Linton. Those are going to be all of the photographs that I have for the Fred Hand family, for the Hand family in this case. And I just wanted to kind of bring up some things that we're working through, that we've worked through, and then just future expectations. Within the challenges that we have some obviously challenges identifying some persons over time. That has gotten easier, as all things do. It comes with practice, and so. I had the pleasure of being able to see some new photographs with Martha before the meeting began, and you know, pat myself on the back when I can spot Olive as a little girl and that whole thing. But that is obviously a skill that's still developing. The nitrate negatives, some of the ones that we received were in poor decay, and the reason I just bring it up is because for those of you that do have collections at home that might have negatives from about pre-1940, pre-1930, you really want to make sure they're not in your garage. You really want to make sure that they're not stacked on top of each other, like one negative on top of the other, even some paper. I mean, ideally, good quality paper, but any paper will do. And the reason for that is nitrate negatives are not a material that we use anymore because they can become combustible, because they do degrade, and because they do what we call off gas, which is basically just produce a very foul smelling chemical that is not good for your health. And so we want everybody to be feeling good for as long as possible. In this case, when we found the negatives, Margarita's team was able to digitize them so that we could preserve whatever we could of them. In this case, also, they're kind of bubbling, so they're not great looking images, but we salvaged something rather than lost it completely. Yes.
We found from my father, early 30s, black and white, large, negative, excellent.
Fantastic.
Excellent. And they reproduced well.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yes. Yes.
And so in the case for this collection, it wasn't all of them, it was some of them. And so that's great. And the ideal scenario is that those are being stored in a cool and dry place. And like I said, not in your attic, not, not in your garage.
That might explain the fire in 24.
It absolutely
A
did.
lot of those nitrates were so volatile, the fire would spread quickly, wouldn't it?
I mean, I guess, yeah, that's possible, but really it happens over time. When we think about the history of film and why we don't have a lot of record of early films, that's because you know how films are wound and they're all together, and then add heat, and then you're in big trouble. And so at the time when those films were being stored, they were stored in metal canisters in a hot warehouse in California. So right, but I mean, that has reason, because Miami is also a very hot and humid place. And so in addition to that, we still have some identified photographs. We're just gonna keep on trucking, as they say, in terms of identifying them. I am gonna share a discrepancy that we found, although we discovered, we solved it today, just today. And then also the correspondence and materials that we have, and just the need for transcription. Because it's in cursive. Because I can read cursive. If you follow the news, we're not teaching cursive anymore. Tragedy, honestly, very, very truly saying that. But as an example, Olive had a correspondence, a pen pal, with a woman named Ava Painter. And so they would just have really lovely conversations back and forth. And so I read some of them. Really, they're just talking about somebody who became ill, somebody who had a baby. But all of that is really wonderful research for learning more about a family. And in general, you know, with genealogy collections, that is the case. This is an example of a pastor. I still don't know his name, but I figured out who he was because he was a member, or he was the pastor for the Trinity Episcopal Cathedral. And so I blew up the photograph just a little more. I mean, do we think that's who it is? Do we think that's the same person? Because I'm pretty convinced. Yeah. All right, consensus. Sold. The hairline, right? We can even possibly identify how old the photograph is compared. So this was the discrepancy, but we figured it out. On the back of the image to the left is a Seminole man. We had it written David Osceola. It's a photograph from 1899. My colleague, Margarita, said, hey, I found him in Florida Memory, but it says Charlie. What do we do? Well, as an archivist, I'm not the one who gets to decide his name. We're just trying to figure out what we find in it. We were fortunate enough to find another image that was shown to us today by Martha, who has his name. It is Charlie. It's not David. We're gonna fix that right now. There he is, there he is. And also just by comparison, what a phenomenal photograph that we have. I mean, just
Charlie on the back.
Says Charlie, yeah. And so that's great success. And that's just the nature of this collection. Every little bit, we're moving forward. These are three individuals that, other than the gentleman in the middle who signed Luther, I do not know who these folks are. And we're gonna have more of those. This is just the print collection. We also have negatives that we're still going to be digitizing. And so there's going to be more notable people, I imagine, is why they were kept, that we will definitely be investigating and seeing if we can find out more about them.
Luther's last name is Chandler. Luther Chandler. He was a very good friend with my grandmother Gretchen and I probably Dewey Hilseback. So
okay,
yeah, Luther Chandler.
Noted. Thank you.
And when you finish, if you could go back to the very first photograph you showed of the whole
Yes.
family, I can identify all of the members of the family if you don't know them.
Thank you. I'd love to confirm it. I think I do, but yes. Okay, so Luther Chandler. I'm gonna remember that. I'm putting it in here. See, success. I had a feeling. This is the last photograph that I wanted to share. Largest group photograph, really phenomenal. The one thing that really stands out for me is that this is a dinner with African Americans, and there are no African Americans in this collection until this photograph. I don't know who Jim Knox is yet. There's a banner in the back. Maybe this is something, maybe he's an elected official. I'm not quite sure. But if I'm having dinner with Olive Hand at a time where she is an important figure within Miami, I imagine that everyone in that room is important. And so I'm really curious to learn more about that and really look forward to continuing to.
What year?
No date, but we can figure. Olive's looking pretty good. We're gonna say it's probably in the 40s by their dresses. And you're doing exactly what we're doing. When we don't have any information, we're trying to suss out, is this older than this? We know this date, but we don't know this date. And that's the detective work that comes alongside this kind of work. And even just to show you, there's like a shimmer. You can't really see it on here, but nitrate film, when it starts to go bad and makes that thing, it starts to affect other things around it. And so that's even sort of like a litmus test. If you see photographs that are doing that, there might be something in your collection that is releasing and then affecting the rest of your collections.
We have a photo that was taken.
Fabulous. Oh, wonderful.
Oh, what a beautiful portrait.
Oh, I'd love to see it. Thank you so much for your time. I hope I didn't speak for too long. Thank you. Without further ado, my colleague, Margarita Mirabal, who is head of the digital collections.
Yeah, I just need the website.
Now, can you see that? Maybe they can. Let's do a stop share and make sure.
Can they see it? Okay. Yes. Okay. So I'm short, so I think it's better if I do this, right? Okay, I'm gonna test it. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Perfect. So yeah, just have to move it a little bit down. So what I'm gonna do now, it's not gonna take too long, but I just wanna show you how you can find all these images online in the comfort of your houses. So first thing, I also wanna do a little promotion since we're doing that for the Miami-Dade Public Library services. Stephanie was mentioning that most of our research has been done through the news bank. So the way to find it, I'm gonna show you really quick. You go here to learning and training, and you're using your library card, or you're in a library branch. Here is it. You see here periodicals, and you go back the news bank, and you have over there the historical newspapers. You have the Miami Herald, you have El Nuevo Herald. So for this collection, we have extensively researched the Miami Herald, all ones. And something that I did a lot too, just going a little bit further. And here in resources, you can see, let me go scroll down a little more. I use it a lot. What is that? Ancestry, yes. You can access it with no charge if you use your library card. So in there, I was able to find a lot of census data for all of this family. I found records from 1910, 1920, 1930. So that's why actually before I spoke with Stephanie, since we're working in the same building, but sometimes we're working on different projects. And sometimes we both ended up doing research at the same time for the same thing. So I was looking for Gretchen, and I found out her last names through the census. And I was like, oh, it's the same person? I'm like, yes, it is. Yes, it is. And so that was what I was checking. I found the census data. I also found, Ancestry.com is also a link with a website called Find a Grave. I think that's the name. Find a Grave. And there's even pictures of the graves in there. And all of that you can access for free if you're using the library website and your library card. It's really, really good source. So now we'll go back. That has been super helpful with this collection, yes.
Do you have an index of the Miami Herald's various articles?
Oh, yeah, she just showed you that.
Yeah, it's that one.
That was that.
Let me get inside because probably just showed from the outside. I'm gonna go through the.
It goes back to 1904.
So
Yes.
we challenge you.
If you go here, News Bank, and we can go here, News Bank, the Miami Herald. You click on it and see.
So Tropic Magazine.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's coming.
There it is.
Tropic, no,
Ooh,
because that already happened.
supplement, yeah.
Problem with the supplements, it's pretty much the main edition, because we just had a presentation this Tuesday on another topic and that came up. We were having people in the audience, we were asking for neighbors and we couldn't find it. So it seems that the supplements unfortunately were not included.
That said, Tropic Magazine, as an example, is on microfilm at Maine.
In the library, so yeah.
In the library. So if you do have questions.
Is that indexed? So I can look up the specific article that I remember from Tropic Magazine way back when, without having to do a search in each individual edition?
If you have it, we have to check on the boxes, right? Because the microfilm is in boxes.
Yeah, not that I can think of, but I can give you an email address and we can see if we can find something. I mean, where there's a will, there's a way, so.
Yeah.
I understand.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's not gonna be like this one. It definitely has to go in person, and we have to check the rolls, the film.
What we do have, in terms of an index, what we do have, we do have an obituary index, which I didn't bring up because I didn't want to take any more time. We do have an obituary index that's from 1898 all the way to 2007. And that has over 960,000 names for folks that died in Miami-Dade County. And so that ends up being tremendously useful when seeking obituaries. It doesn't cover everything, but that's certainly a big help, especially for folks who are looking for obituaries. Can't exactly remember the date, the proper spelling of a name. You can sort of work with them and it comes in.
I can show you right now how to access that one too.
All right.
It's the same way, it's in here, in learning and training. You scroll down. And it's gonna be under resources, under the M. This is Miami-Dade.
See another laptop.
Just didn't bring my glasses. I pretend that I don't need them. So it's here, Miami-Dade obituary indexes, is that one.
The story behind this is pretty interesting. There's a woman who did this every day, pretty much. She came in and she went through the newspapers and she collected this information just as a volunteer.
As a volunteer for 2 decades. She did
Her name was Anne.
Ann McFadden.
In McFadden.
Still alive, still kicking.
Is there a monument to her?
I think we should make one. We
I
should
think
make
you
one.
should.
Also, a credit to her accuracy. It's one in, I don't even know. We've only found maybe a few slight errors and it's been pretty.
How old is she now?
I spoke to Anne about 4 years ago and I think she was 92
Wow.
and still spry. So good.
So going back to the Fred hand, how you find it online. So this is the library homepage, and you go here to Digital Archives Collections. Click. And then we have here all the digitized collections that we have from special collections, from art collections. But if you scroll, there is Fred hand. And then I had to pick this one as the homepage because I found it amazing. If you like if you want to talk about the studio, this is the perfect. It's a group portrait, has the name on it. So
Do you have the Romer collection also?
yes, we do.
Wonderful.
And I can show it at the end if you want interest.
I would like that.
So here when you browse, and you can see the difference between this one and the Romer. As of today, we have only 60 records in this collection. Romer is finished and it's 16,000.
Wow.
Yeah. So the way we have been arranging it here, we arrange them by format. So the first things that are gonna show up are gonna be the photographs. And then if you scroll down, you're gonna find all that related information. So the newspaper clips, we have the correspondence, and that's a postcard in there too. So several ways to research the website. You can just browse and be looking at everything. You can specifically type here what you want to find out, just search, type whatever you're looking for. Or you can use what is in here, what we call the faceted search. That we have titles that we have been using for the images, main keywords. And keywords is also what the library we use is the control vocabulary, so we have to use a specific terminology that library uses. But we also added the notes, which is more like free for us to type. So in here, I was trying to put it like, if a person was appearing on the records with a different names, I was trying to put it. That's why I'm saying like it was very difficult with Gretchen, because I found Olive, I found then all the last names as single, then all the last names she was using over the years. And I think it's in here.
Oh, there it is.
That's the first one, actually, yeah. So a little bit of background information, who were her parents, and all the names that I was finding here in those different census data and all of those. And definitely this is a work in progress. You also can search by format. If you want to see a photograph, if you want to see a letter, we put also the decades, so you can search by the decades on the date range. So this is definitely a work in progress. There's a lot of information that can definitely be improved, and Martha is definitely the best person to help us with this work. And now that it's live, please feel free to reach out to us. If you find something that you can add the information, or it's something that is mistakenly there, please, we'll be more than happy.
So do I need to have a library card to access this?
No.
Collection? Okay, awesome.
No, that's the thing with the digital collection. The digital collection is free for anyone. So it's just clicking on the icon that I show you, and it shows up.
Perfect.
Mm-hmm. Some really good things about the digital collection, and I'm gonna do it again. There's a very good Zoom capability. So that hard time that Stephanie has been having, you don't. Once it's digitized, you can really zoom and see details like a lot. So like for recognition, to be able to read those, sometimes there are small signage on the street or things like that, it's very easy once the image is digitized. Yeah, definitely much easier. So I go back in here. Oh, I'm sorry, I just rotated. One more thing, all the images from the website, they can be downloaded in low resolution, which means it's gonna be small picture that can be used online, but if you wanna do like a print or you wanna use it for something else, it's not good at it, you have to contact us and we can provide a high resolution photograph or document in general. So, questions?
Romer.
Okay, it's the first collection, you noticed that, right?
Goes on for days.
Yes, it's here.
Wow, there it is.
Yep. And we actually did a special homepage for Romer because once we finished, we realized that browsing, it was not that useful anymore when you have 16,000 images in a collection. So we decided like, okay, how can we help at least people to get an idea of what is in this collection? So same thing, you have the search bar and then the browse options is still there, but we work on creating some generic categories. So like, you can look for transportation, you can look for people, you can see portraits, you want to see what's going on in places, so we put events, like festivities, parades, everything that was going on in Miami for years. Those categories are very general. So we also did something that I like a lot, the timeline. So this helps more like the time frame of this collection. So where it starts, where it goes. You can see from here that starts even before Romer actually arrived to Miami, because he was not only taking photographs, he also collected from photographers from before. So I think this one is from, that is in there? This one is from Hoy, because I remember.
Yeah, that's what.
So the timeline cannot be seen very well on the screen, I don't know why. Years. Okay, this part is not working very well. Oh no, yeah, it is. Here you can see. It can be moved through the years. So the timeline also helps. It goes like from the 20s and it ends up almost in the 60s. there. It's also, we've made a selection of relevant topics that we have a lot of images, like landmarks. There's so many. If you're interested in architecture, this is a collection that you really want to go through. There are like so many photographs of the Biltmore events that were happening on the Biltmore over the years. Bayfront Park, we have a lot of Coral Gables in general, all the Coral Gable development, and Teresa Thomas, transportation, steamships. And we have some images of the African American history. We have about this lady in particular, Ruth Bryan Owen, since she was the first woman elected to Congress from Florida. And we have several images on her. So we really like to highlight some of the topics that over the years, this collection is the one that we get most requests, as you can imagine. And for all sort of purposes, we have been asking for images for documentaries, for books, editorial. They have been to do exhibits, and really not only in Miami, it's been like even international. So what we tried to put here was also like the topics that we get the most requests. And just do a little bit of browsing. Yeah, every page is gonna show like 200 images per page. So that's why we ended up like with 50 pages of images. And another way to search it, it's also the same way. You can go here and go to the range, specific photographers. As you can see, it's not only Romer. Location, I put here on the locations. And if you're interested in anything in particular, I can just type it.
The coconut palm forest at Crandon Park.
I'm gonna put Crandon Park.
Yeah.
Yeah, you see the coconut forest? It's there. Oh, sorry.
What year did Romer stop photographing?
The latest images that we have, I believe they're from the 50s, are the latest ones that we have here.
Where is he buried?
I don't know. That's a good question that we probably need to research. No, I have no idea. And since we mentioned that we have all these obituary resources, that's something that probably can do.
Yeah, I guess Miami City Cemetery.
And add that on the description.
Mhm.
Margarita,
Yes,
to go back to Fred Hand. So
sure.
far, you've digitized 60, mostly prints and newspaper, right?
And there's some letters too.
You haven't really started on any negatives, right? Are you?
No, we haven't touched the negatives yet. I have to be honest, I told Stephanie, like, give me the easy stuff first. So we really haven't touched like the glass negatives. That's gonna be like a tremendous challenge for my department. We have never done it before. So I'm actually now doing research. Because we have different equipment depending on the format. We mostly, like for photographs, we use just the flatbed scanners. And when there is negative, it's just, we remove the cover in the inside of the scanner and it's glass on both sides. That's how we digitize negatives. Those equipment, the problem is like when we use like those porcelain or we use glass, that can scratch the equipment, the glass of the scanner. So that, yeah, we have been like, we need to find out how other institutions do this. So we're on that process right now.
Okay, so you're waiting to compare notes.
That's what we're doing. Yep, I'm like, yes, exactly. Let's find like how other folks do it.
Now, you know, one of the ways they do it is put it up and shoot it with a camera.
That's what we did with this one. No, it's the next after this one. Esta era, no, this is the next one.
No, it's the one with the glasses.
Yes, this one, it's in porcelain. So what we did, we do have a professional photographer in our team.
Yeah.
Yep, we photograph.
So that's a negative.
We just photograph.
That's,
No,
that's a positive.
that's a print, but it's in
It's on
porcelain.
Oh,
And yes, I was scared about putting it on the scanner and damage the glass, so we just photograph it.
oh, okay.
High resolution, very high resolution, and it was a photograph.
Well, that works. I mean, it's not
Mhm.
perfect, but it works.
It's an option.
Yeah.
It's definitely an option, doesn't look bad at all. Yeah, this was photograph.
Well, you can try putting the negative on a light table and shoot down. That works very well.
We have like tables, so we can try that too. That's the other part. Once we wanna test like 2 or 3 techniques and see which one has the best results.
You need a really sharp lens, obviously, for the camera with it fixed.
Yeah.
And then you move it, move the camera up and down.
Yeah.
We have different lenses, so that's definitely something that we have to test it out. There's something that Stephanie also mentioned, it was the transcript service. Because we use something called OCR, which is optical character recognition software. And that kind of works like for something that is printed. But for those handwriting letters, oh wait, that software cannot read anything at all. So by the way, now there have been some tests also with artificial intelligence. There are some OCR softwares now that want to be able, because those are like, those software, they're learning by putting like a lot of, but there's not really one in the market yet
Somehow
that is really accurate, not yet.
Somehow the post office does it. You know, all those people who write on a letter where it's going and it gets there.
So we have mostly relied on volunteers for that kind of job, for the transcriptions, yeah. I have hopes with AI, by the way, I do. That at some point we're gonna end up with having a really good software that's gonna be able to read all the handwriting, but no, we're not there yet. So that's gonna have to be done, yeah. So let me see if there's something I wanna show here. Yeah, we've added all the newspaper clippings. The letters, even with envelopes, everything. Because it's kind of like the full story. So that's why when there is a letter, we have the envelope, we add the envelope.
Find out who that person was.
I think this one is funny, something what happened with this one. Because here's the letter. Here's the envelope. But the back of the envelope was used later on to leave a note.
Yeah.
Yep, not related at all with the actual the original document. Yep. So yeah, it's life. The envelope was used, reused.
Back to Hans' collection, he was here in 1896, 98. Did you have any photos from that time on these old?
But the hand collection, because this is what happened. The Roman collection, that one that I was just showing, pretty much starts in the 1920s.
Right,
So the great thing about the Fred hand is prior to that.
right.
So we have, so far we only have those 60 records, but there's gonna be more. So I believe, yes, they're older images, right?
Yeah, the circumstance is that not everything has a date to it. And so we have an estimation of it. The photograph that you saw with Gretchen as a baby, you know, Gretchen was born in 1896. So that would be an example of a photograph that we know was from that time. But it's difficult to estimate without
So there was an allusion, I believe, in one of the slides to the Spanish American War soldiers.
Yes.
Would he have taken pictures of that thing?
It's very feasible. We don't have nothing that we've reviewed, even in the negatives, appeared to be of that. But then also I had mentioned that there were many photographs from Fred's studio that were lost due to a fire in 24. And so it doesn't mean it doesn't exist in the universe. It just didn't, if it only survived in that space, then no. So not within our collection at this time. I know that during that time and during the Spanish-American War, there were soldiers that were stationed in Camp Miami, which is right next to Overtown. And so I'm imagining they would have been coming from there. Romer, not in this collection, but I know that in some of the paper collections, there are some small selection of photographs from that time that have not been digitized yet. So there's some stuff, not a lot, but some.
So, and again, my last point is that, like, please help us to improve it as the collection grows, because we're gonna have more questions as we've been adding more items. Definitely it's gonna happen. And yeah, the articles help a lot. All the information that we can get from Ancestry, all the information we get from the newspapers, you are the original sources, so you're definitely gonna help us.
I think some people that are with us today have some Fred hand photos
Mhm.
from their own family. Want to share something? There you go. And I suspect that outside of just who's in the room now, that a lot of families might have a Fred hand photo. So now there's an opportunity now over time to
Yes.
add these to the collection.
There's something that I can say about that. If you're interested in keep your original, you're not interested in donate it to the library, we can still scan it and just return it to you.
Yeah.
You're still gonna have to be willing to share the digital one.
So if you have a business card with you,
I do.
wow, wonderful. So before we go, get a business card from Margarita, and let's arrange somehow to digitize and add to the Fred hand collection. Martha has more stuff that could be digitized and added. So really, we're just beginning. And you can see there's only 60 photos. There's a lot more out there, but now there's a beginning. We can establish, you know, a much larger collection over time. But it's interesting, when you see a Fred hand portrait photo of early Miami, you know it's him. Almost absolutely. Well, that's the giveaway. His name is on it.
We have a lot of photos that mine has been taken by him, but we've got 3 here that have.
Right, and that's what I'm saying. When you sort of narrow it down to who could have taken this photo in 1899, if it's a studio photo with that psych background of the Everglades or something, there's a darn good chance it had to be Fred. So I think that as you know, everybody spread the word a little bit as we get out, you know, the knowledge of Fred hand, people might start recognizing something. And maybe those could be added to the collection. I think it would be great.
The way we do it with digitized